It's April 11th, 1978. Retired pro basketball player John Brisker calls his girlfriend Melvis Williamson, who is back home in Seattle where Brisker was supersonic. Brisker is calling from Uganda. He told his girlfriend he was going there with a friend to lay the groundwork for an import-export business that he was hoping could pay off his creditors. Brisker on this phone call tells Melvis he will soon send for her and their young daughter. He hangs up the phone and nobody ever hears from John Brisker again. Brisker disappears off the face of the earth without a trace. He is declared legally dead in May of 1985, only to settle his estate. Nobody knows what happened to John Brisker to this day. In fact, the medical examiners who declared him dead don't even know if he's alive or not. Spokesperson James Callahan is quoted saying, "Essentially, we don't consider him dead." Some say he died fighting as a mercenary. Others say he got caught up in the 1985 coup d'etat. The only certain thing in the story of John Brisker is uncertainty. John Brisker was raised in the projects of Detroit. Brisker dabbled in boxing, but grew up playing and falling in love with basketball. He told reporters his mother had a stroke when he was young, leaving half her body paralyzed. The government wanted to take us kids away from her, but she went to work and raised us. Brisker grew up to play college basketball for the University of Toledo, where he also played tuba in the marching band. Brisker flunked out of college the first semester of his senior year. Brisker's college stats of 14.1 points per game, plus his height and weight of 6'5" and 215, led to him being selected by the 76ers in the 1969 NBA draft and the Pittsburgh Pipers in the ABA draft. For maybe the first time in John Brisker's life, he was a man with good options. Brisker chose to sign with the reigning ABA champion Pittsburgh Pipers, and it seemed to be the right choice. Brisker was an all-ABA selection in 2 of his first 3 seasons, ended up averaging a whopping 26.1 points in his ABA career. See, Brisker had 3 main talents: shooting, rebounding, and fighting. Former teammate Spencer Haywood described Brisker as LeBron James with anger issues. Due to Brisker's violent nature and underlying anger, legendary tales began to spread about him like wildfire. One goes that he ran onto the court during practice waving a gun. Utah hosted a John Brisker intimidation night and had professional boxers on the bench. Tom Nieselike, a former ABA and Sonics coach, put a $500 bounty on Brisker before a game, then watched Brisker get flattened. When Nieselike later coached Brisker with the Sonics, Brisker smiled and said, "That was a pretty good move, coach." By 1972, Brisker wanted a new contract. The Seattle Sonics pursued him, despite warnings from the NBA commissioner at the time, J. Walter Kennedy. Sonics owner Sam Schulman signed Brisker to a 6-year, $1 million contract anyway, and the Sonics were later fined by the NBA. Brisker and new Sonics head coach, NBA legend Bill Russell, were ready to rock, and 4 days into training camp, Brisker and 6'8" forward Joby Wright began to push and shove each other near the basket. There are various stories as to what happened next. Some teammates remember Wright throwing the first punch, others say it was Brisker, but all agree on the end result. Brisker broke Wright's jaw and knocked out 4 teeth. Hit the ground like a bag of potatoes, Watts remembers. Brisker walked off, "Ain't nobody say," expletive. The gym was like a funeral. Ambulance came, Russell told everyone to go home. Former teammate Spencer Haywood says that Russell had Jim Brown, the all-time great NFL running back, try to mentor Brisker after this. Them 2 expletives ended up being buddies and playing chess all the time, Haywood says. They were 2 of the same kind of characters. I know this expletive sounds out there, but talk to the other players. They'll tell you the same thing. Brisker was talented, and his teammates thought he could be a star. But Coach Russell didn't think the same and had him come off the bench frequently. As coach and president, Russell won every time. At one point, Russell sent Brisker to the Eastern League as a public demotion. "I'll relax," Brisker admitted at the time. "I became a fat cat, not as hungry as I was years ago." He scored 51 points in his first game after the demotion and 58 in the next. But still, Russell was not impressed. Near the end of the 1973-74 season, Brisker had not played for the Sonics in more than a month and was awaiting the birth of his first child. "I gotta grow up. I know that now," he told the Philadelphia Inquirer. "Attitude is very important to me. I'm gonna turn my whole life around. I've been carrying a big chip. Felt it was me against the world. I got a bad rep, but I'm gonna live it down." In training camp before the season, Brisker barely made the roster, and less than 2 months into the season was stuck on the bench again. Brisker was furious and told reporters the Sonics tried to buy out his remaining contract for 50 cents on the dollar. This season hurt Brisker. He became distant and cynical. After this season, a club Brisker had opened, the New Heritage House, was forced to close, and Brisker owed more than $40,000 in rent, taxes, and insurance. In October 1975, at the start of another season, Brisker wandered into the Coliseum. He shook hands with Russell and assistant coach Bob Hopkins. He still had 3 years remaining on his contract, but he did not practice. When asked if Brisker would be offered a uniform, Bill Russell flatly replied, "No." Then, John Brisker went to Africa. Sometime in 1977, Brisker visited former teammate Spencer Haywood in New York. According to Haywood, Brisker had recently returned from Africa. He was always interested in going and returning to his roots. Haywood says teammates remember him borrowing books about Africa and wearing dashikis. This week-long reunion in New York should have been fun, but Brisker was mad. He spoke adamantly about his deep grudge with former coach Bill Russell and how he planned to return to Africa. "You don't need to go back over there," Haywood remembers saying. "You don't sound too healthy, and there's some anger you need to deal with. It's not Russell, it's you." Haywood says he thought Brisker was getting involved in some dark, shady places. He thinks Brisker showed him a picture of him with Ugandan dictator Idi Amin, although he isn't sure. Either way, Brisker didn't like Haywood's intrusion and left. After that, John Brisker vanished into thin air, never to be seen by anyone again. John Brisker's disappearance sparked all sorts of rumors, including him being shot in Africa. Brisker's brother Ralph said he had not seen his brother since 1976. His mother said he hadn't seen him in 3 years. His wife filed for divorce in 1977, saying Brisker abused her, leaving her deaf in her left ear. "He bounced me around the wall and threw me on the bed," she said in court documents, according to a 1985 article in the Pittsburgh Press. "He smothered me until I couldn't breathe." Brisker left behind 2 young daughters, his house in Redmond, and $29,000 in his bank account, plus years of court battles over his estate. All that's certain is that no one has heard from John Brisker in almost 40 years. Whenever Slick Watts watches Shawshank Redemption, he says, "I always think of him somewhere, kicking back and saying, 'I ain't dead.'" Spencer Haywood still has the conga drums Brisker left with him in New York. For years, he took those drums wherever he moved and thought of Brisker whenever he played them. He was complicated more than most, Haywood says, but boy, did I love some John Brisker.